If you guys are into shooting the copper bullets, man, I got a great deal for you. We have partnered with Barnes Bullets. They are world famous, known for that VOR TX rifle, the deadliest, most accurate hunting loads on the planet. I like this company, guys, because I have a personal connection to these guys. Down in central Utah, my dad's got this ranch, and on the way to the ranch, you drive past this Barnes Bullets factory, and it's a really cool building just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I know them well. These all-copper bullets provide destructive power, double diameter expansion, maximum weight retention, and devastating energy transfer, all with excellent accuracy. It's a great choice for Western big game hunters and shooters everywhere. So check them out at barnesbullets.com and let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. You've heard my Silencer Central ads, I'm sure. And I don't know if you have reached out and contacted them yet. If you're interested in a silencer, though, man, this is the way to go. Silencer Central from the start to finish, because it's quite the process. If you've never gotten a suppressor for one of your rifles, you've got to go through and do the ATF paperwork and the background checks and all that kind of stuff. But the cool part is Silencer Central takes care of it all. It's a several-month process, and so what's cool about it is if you don't want to drop all that money right at the top end of this whole process, you can just get a hold of them, and you can do like a payment plan while they're taking care of all the paperwork on the back end. I have the Banish 30, and this thing is awesome. I've never used one of these before, so I'm like learning as I go along. But what I was getting at is from start to finish, Silencer Central has been some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with through the process. They treated me like I was family, and I really appreciated it. You guys should check them out, and you can call them at 866-891-4494 or check it out at silencercentral.com. It will be worth your time, I promise. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine Studio and brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Thanks, guys, for joining us this week. We are going to kind of, if you guys have tuned in the past, where we do the School of September episodes all about archery, elk season, and hunting elk in the rut, this is going to be kind of along those lines, but for November whitetail. So, I don't know, School of November, if you will. Jon Gabrio is one of who I consider one of the top public land Western whitetail hunters that I know, and I thought he would be perfect for the first time doing this to kick off this whole series with. And he is on the line right now. Jon, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
Doing good, man. I appreciate you joining me and bearing with me through all the technical difficulties of getting this thing recorded.
Hey, it's a Friday afternoon. I think you're trying to check out, and I think your computer is trying to check out for the weekend too.
That could be very true, but the computer got a workout this week, so it's probably ready for a break for sure. How are things, man?
Things are good. Just been extremely busy this year. It's been a year for work, I'll tell you that, and then just trying to squeeze in some hunting here and there, and getting ready here for a little prep for November. It's mid-October right now, and actually, we're closing in on end October actually already, and kind of getting ready for some deer season, and feel pretty fortunate. But yeah, it's I feel like this year is one of those years that just flew by, and I don't know how it's almost November already. I feel like it was January and I blinked and now it's it's over.
Dude, I don't know what I'm kind of riding the same boat. It was like we bought a house right over the summer, and trying to sell our old property, and this whole process of getting the house ready to remodel and all this stuff, it took forever to get to September. And then all of a sudden September hit, and I don't even know what happened. And here it is, like you said, almost November. I'm like not even ready for deer season, man. I need to get out there.
Yeah, I know. You and me both. I feel like, well, it was kind of weird this year. I actually hunted elk a lot longer than I normally would. And so I kind of drug it out into the first, well, 8-10 days, whatever, October. And before I finally killed one, and it just, I don't know, I spent a lot of time, and it just kind of stretched it out. So I think that's what's throwing me off. And then I still have an antelope tag, and I don't know. I'm like, how am I going to squeeze all this in here? But we'll figure it out.
And then you got me calling you for Apex advertising and trying to get you to get some work done right during hunting season, of course.
Yeah, you're just throwing another wrench in that. You've been trying to go out and hunt, and you're like, hey, hold on, you're not going. So no, we're good.
I feel like I do always kind of hit you up for something through Apex right around hunting season. For some reason, it works out like that. Sorry about that, man.
Hey, no, we're good. We're good. I appreciate it. So,
well, you had a pretty good season. I want to talk about that real quick. And I also, I mean, it's always a good idea. We get tons of new listeners with each episode and each month, and you haven't been on the show for a while. Mm-hmm. So we should probably introduce who you are and what you do, and I think it's worthy to note. In fact, I was just recording with Scott Reekers yesterday over at Eastman's, and we talked about you on that episode because you are the one that kind of lined me up with Eastman's and introduced me to Scott Reekers over there, and got the whole thing going to now I'm partnered with Eastman's, and they take really good care of me, and I really enjoy the team over there, and that's thanks to you, man.
Yeah, no, that hey, I'm just happy to be there and make the introduction. And sounds like you guys kind of hit it off pretty good. And I'm happy for you, and you've done a great job with your podcast. And I felt like, hey, it was a good fit for both of you. So yeah, I'm glad that you could both kind of benefit from that. But yeah, no, I mean, I love everyone over there, and they're all great people, and so are you. So I think it's a good team. But yeah. So as far as what I do, I own Apex Advertising, and I do a lot of design work, website design work, marketing, stuff like that in the hunting industry, outdoor industry, and all. Obviously, I mean, a lot of other stuff outside the industry, but that's kind of my primary bread and butter. And I've been having my business for about 12 years now in the industry. So that's what I do, my day job, day in and day out. And then also own what's called the Elk Collective. And then that's an online educational course, and co-owner with Dan Staten on that. And then, yeah, so we love hunting elk, love hunting whitetails, and feel pretty fortunate to now live in Montana and be able to explore the vast woods over here in the long seasons that we get. So I feel pretty fortunate.
Heck yeah. I want to talk about that actually in a minute, but Jon is being very humble here for those of you listening. The logo that you see for the Western Huntsman, he designed that. You helped Cam Haynes with all his stuff. I don't know if you still do or not, but I mean, throw out some brands that you've done like the graphics and logos and websites and stuff like that for.
Yeah. So Cam actually just quit his day job that he had forever.
He did? He finally quit, huh?
Finally quit about a year ago. And
wow.
Yep. He started the Keep Hammering Collective and that podcast and everything. And I was pretty fortunate to be able to work with them and kind of get the whole website up and going and rebrand and do all that and help get all the marketing and everything set for the podcast. And then there was another guy that kind of did the logo design and stuff for that, but I did all the web design and all the email marketing and all the stuff behind it. And then right before hunting season, passed it over to another company that just had a lot bigger bandwidth to kind of help Cam. And they did a big truck giveaway and a bunch of other stuff. So they're doing a great job. and super happy and humbled to be able to work with them and Cam and everything on that. So it just kind of reached. I've obviously had my business for a long time and had set clients that, you know, I have obligations to each month. And it was just kind of something that was getting too big for me to handle a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine, man. It's interesting too, because I know, like, he came out with that book last year. And it's a great book. It's a great read. And I remember thinking, I've always been impressed with Cam from the standpoint, like, he's got, let's face it, he's a well-known dude. He's one of the most prolific elk hunters on the planet. He hangs out with Joe Rogan and stuff. And I was always amazed he still had his day job working with, like, the city water district or whatever he did.
yeah.
But I knew, I had a suspicion once that book came out, that might change.
Yeah. Yeah. He finally, I think he reached retirement status with the city of Springfield there with the water department.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I think. And then so he just called her a day and decided now he's doing the podcast. And I mean, his lift run shoot series with the podcast and everything, and pulling in people and, you know, bringing them into his daily life, and, you know, between shooting bows and getting the bow rack involved and running up the mountain and training at his gym and stuff. And then being able to kind of also talk and bring some of these people in and shed light on, you know, different areas that it's not all hunting, you know, I mean, it's like,
yeah,
total different off the wall, random people, but they're relevant in their industries. And it's really cool. Like, I mean, it's inspiring to kind of see some of that stuff. And obviously, you know, you can learn a lot too. So he's been a huge influence in my life along the way. And, yeah, I mean, when we did the Keep Hammering logo way back in the day, and I think everyone's kind of seen that, and I was the one behind that. And then I've worked with Cam ever since. I actually went on a caribou hunt with him and Kip Folks back in 2008. And then after that, we kind of stayed friends, and here I was working on his stuff for years, and it's been a cool journey. So yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
When you talk about Eastman's, actually, I won that caribou hunt out of Eastman's. They had it published in there, and Under Armour did back in the day. And that's actually where I learned about it, wrote the essay, and won the thing. Was actually out of an Eastman's journal.
Yeah, so, I remember that. I remember you telling me about that, man. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Cool.
Well,
yeah,
I just, what's that?
I was going to say some other brands. Obviously, Phelps, like I've worked with Phelps since day one on all of that stuff, and still working with them now. And man, I mean, I've been super fortunate to work with a lot of people in the industry. I mean, I've done stuff for Kifaru and Leupold, and I mean, you name it. I mean, there's so many companies. I mean, yeah, it's so many lists. Eastman's, I do stuff for them monthly. So I mean, it's in Dan's elk shaped stuff, and I mean, a lot of the big brands, Camo Fire, Black Ovis, you name it. I've done stuff for a lot of them. So it's been.
I felt like it was important to highlight that because I think I said it last time you were on the show, or maybe it was, I think this is like your third or fourth time coming on this show. And I always love having you on, man. I always get like excellent feedback from listeners. They write in, and because, you know, every time I put out an episode, I'll get a bunch of messages about what people think of the episode. And yours is always positive. I never get like browbeat or verbally abused when I have you on the show. So it's kind of nice.
That's a plus, thankfully.
So don't change that during this episode, okay?
Yeah, we'll keep her going.
You know what I'm curious about, man? We have like this connection with where you lived in Utah, and then now you moved to Montana, and I never thought I'd say this, but so did I. Now I don't know if am I considered like a true Montanan, even though I'm like right on the border of Idaho? Like I can almost throw a rock into Idaho. Does that still counts, right?
I don't know, man. That's iffy up there in that country. But
I know, right? Run it by your people.
Yeah, my people. Yeah, no, I would say you're good. You're on this side of the river, and we'll call you good.
Okay. But what I'm majorly curious about is, after living in Utah and hunting Utah, and you know, going through that whole thing as a resident in the state of Utah, what's like the biggest difference between that and living in Montana? And don't do it in a way that promotes everybody in Utah to move to Montana.
Yeah. No, man, Utah, honestly, there's some great opportunity there for big animals. Like they manage that state really well for trophy quality in a lot of the units. It's tough as a resident. You pretty much have to be a resident to draw a lot of the tags. I mean, you can do it as a non-resident, but I mean, it's going to take you forever. But some of the units that you can kind of draw, and they call them general units, you still have to draw those to even hunt them. So they're still limited every year. So really, you're kind of hunting a general unit, if you will, but it's still drawn. Man, I seen some great animals when I lived in Utah, and I had a lot of fun hunting it. And it was a great time. And the thing is I was kind of behind the eight ball when I actually moved to Utah and building points and stuff like that. So I feel like, I mean, catching some of the big trophy elk units and stuff like that makes it a little tough. And then the other thing too is a resident, which is kind of weird from a non-resident, but a resident down there, you have to pick like once in a lifetime species. So like, you know, a mountain or a moose or whatever, sheep. You can only put in for one of those each year. And then you can only put in for a limited entry deer or limited entry elk tag if you're trying to draw one. So they really make you pick, like, do you like elk? Do you like deer? And like pick one. But it really, I mean, in my opinion, that's what makes the hunting so great is like, you know, you don't have everyone competing where like Montana, for example, I mean, the seasons are pretty liberal. I mean, it's like you get 6 weeks of archery and 5 weeks of rifle. And if you don't kill them with a bow, you go pick up your gun and keep hunting in general units for the most part, you know?
Yeah,
and,
I know. I'm excited about that part.
Yeah, which is awesome. But I mean, it's tough though, because it's like the quality. Yes, there's some big animals here. And in certain areas, there's big animals. But overall, I would say like true quality wise on, you know, deer and elk and stuff like that, like I think Utah is pretty dang tough to beat if you have the points to do it. Now here's the one kicker: as a non-resident now, you can build points every year for all the species. So like deer, elk, sheep, moose.
You're talking in Utah.
In Utah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like now that I've left and I built some points before, and then when I lived there, and then now that I'm gone, I'm still building points, but now I can build them across all the species. Granted, I'm like still behind, but it opens up kind of that opportunity to go back and hunt, you know, maybe someday if I get lucky and draw one of them or, you know, whatever. But at least you're playing all the odds and all the species, which is nice. But the thing with Montana, I mean, there's so much ability and availability to hunt here. You can, I mean, hunt a lot of the western half of the state every year on a general archery or rifle tag. Just go over east, like then it starts getting to some draw units for elk and, you know, whatnot. And there are a few draw units for, you know, deer around the state, but for the most part, you can kind of hunt most of the state on a general tag, archery and rifle. I will say there's a lot of people out, especially during rifle season, and it gets pretty dang tough to, you know, pin down, you know, a big buck just because they get hunted so hard unless you have access on private or something. So that's kind of my only thing. I mean, I always joke about it with some of my buddies, and I'm like, you could kill a giant anything anywhere in Montana at any time. Like you get lucky because like there's just so much country that there's animals that just make it to old age here, and you never know when one of them is going to slip. So I mean, you could shoot a 400-inch bull somewhere, you know, just total random luck, but the odds of it are, I mean, pretty dang slim, but I mean, you never know. So
you just never know.
Yeah.
And what's your take on Jon? Like Jon, I guess what I'm asking is like, for me, I understand, you know, I grew up in Utah, and when I remember hunting back in the 90s for deer and elk back in the day when like there was it was just like this orange army. There was somebody on every ridge. There was somebody on every in every drainage, if not two or three of them. It's like that time too when people started really recognizing the whole elk calling thing, right? They really started coming to fruition. There was, obviously people did it before then, but I feel like the 90s is when, you had like that Terminator call come out, and those Primos videos were coming out. And so everybody started getting into bugling for elk. And like
Mm-hmm.
you'd go out they have weird elk seasons in the state of Utah.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember hunting up there in this area that it was like the last week of August or something, or like way before, not way before, but before the rut really kicked off, right?
Yep.
And I remember walking up this ridge in the dark, and all of a sudden the sun starts coming up, and I'm like, there's bugles everywhere, man. And I thought I was the only one on this mountain, so I'm like, man, I am the shit. I figured this out. There are bugles going off everywhere. I'm going to totally kill an elk. As it got brighter, I started noticing, no, that's other hunters, right? And that was back before I could recognize the difference between a real hunter and just, or I'm sorry, a real elk versus a hunter.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess where I'm going is the game back then, like the hunting game in general, was super challenging in Utah. You didn't, I mean, people would get excited to see a doe. The deer herds were down. There was not a lot of space that wasn't already taken. Which is weird because Utah has a ton of public land. But I feel like the herds have really improved in the state of Utah because of the way they manage it now.
Sure.
However, that said, I am the kind of guy. One of the things I love about Idaho and Montana is I can go down and just get a tag, and we have these liberal long seasons, and there's something about a long season that I feel like helps both the wild game, the wildlife, and the hunter. From a sense, like I remember, like in Utah, they had like this 5-day deer season, and it was freaking D-Day out there, man, because everybody was panicking. They only had 5 days to find a mule deer buck, and they're shooting everything from spikes to whatever buck they could find, and it was like chaos. It was pure chaos. Where there's a calmness in both Idaho and Montana, where they're, because of these longer seasons. And the opportunity to continue hunting. Like I'm going out. I didn't tag out in September. That season ended for me on September 30th. But next week I've got 4 days in the state of Idaho to go take a rifle out and try to find an elk, right? And so I'm going to do that. And so I guess there's this fine line, and I want to get your take on this. This is a super long question, man. This is probably the longest question in podcast history. But like, where is that fine line, that balance that you see from, great hunter opportunities such as Montana, Idaho, and some other over-the-counter states, I think Colorado, versus like a real restrictive state like the state of Utah? Do you have like a preference? Obviously, you live in Montana now, so I'm assuming. But like, where is that fine line, and what would be your preference?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a few conversations with this, and actually Kylie and I were sitting around elk camp this year talking about it. And I think, I mean, it's tough because it's one of those things that most people only get a week or two of vacation a year that they're going to get a chance to even hunt, right? Mm-hmm. It's like with their job or the family and other things, they're only going to get a week or two. So it's like for them, it probably doesn't matter so much. They're like, hey, if I could get one of these limited tags or whatever, I'm only going to get a week. So it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to get a chance maybe to go back with a rifle or maybe that is their 2 weeks. It's like, well, I know some people, it's like they get a week for archery. They don't kill. They go back out and take another week with the rifle later in the season. So it's like kind of a catch-22, but my thing, I think on it, like, for example, like I hunted a little bit longer this year and I was, holding out for, trying to find a bigger bull. And then towards the end of the season there, I was like, well, I had my last day and I was like, I'm just going to shoot a bull with my bow. And cause I really want to kill one with a bow. I don't really care about shooting an elk with a rifle so much, even though I would, but I just don't want to go deal with.
I was going to say that I remember this cool video from Loophole of you killing a bull on a river in somewhere. I'm not going to name the place. That was pretty epic.
That was cool. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't shoot with a rifle. I'm just saying around here, it's like I kind of shift gears to wanting to hunt deer or, go whitetail hunting, obviously, like do, other things. So, and the Orange Army's out. So then it's like, I don't want to go deal with that as much trying to shoot an elk personally, but that's my own preference. Now, this being said, I do like, so Montana last year, they split up some of the units over east to where if you drew one of those units during that specified season, unless it was a rifle tag, you could only hunt that unit all season. Now, if you drew the rifle tag, you had to archery hunt and rifle hunt that specific unit only all season. So if you just drew an archery tag, you could only archery hunt that unit. But then when general rifle came, obviously your tag wasn't good over there anyways. But then you had to go back to the general units, but you could still hunt elk in a general unit with a rifle. But now what they've done is the rifle tags, like you have to archery hunt and rifle hunt that unit only all year. I do like that in a way because it keeps a lot of the guys, makes them pick and keeps them in that unit. So it does help lower some of the hunter pressure in other areas versus, oh man, I'm struggling, over in one of those units. I'm going to come back and just go hunt a general tag now, over here where people who didn't draw one of those archery tags or rifle tags over there, like they kind of have a little bit better hunting in the general units because you don't have people flooding them, that can hunt.
Yeah, both. From those other, that makes sense.
I do I like the idea. The only thing I don't like about the idea, I mean, for someone like myself, fortunately able to take time, I can go hunt and make trips, longer trips or go back and forth more because I have time to do it. Where like Kylie gets her 1 week off. If she doesn't kill, now she can't archery hunt, around the house here the other 5 weeks archery season. So,
that does suck.
Yeah. So then it's like, she gets her 1 week and then now she basically then she has to wait till rifle season unless she can squeak some more time to go back. But it's like, you got to capitalize on that. So that kind of sucks. But I mean, I like the idea of still being able to have the chance to go out with a rifle, especially for someone like her or, my sister or someone who doesn't have the time to keep archery hunting over there where you could spend 2-3 weeks and make it worthwhile. But I mean, I've had guys toy around with the idea of what if you had to pick a bow or a gun, for like elk hunting. So like, well, like Washington, for example, you had to pick archery, muzzleloader, or rifle. You have to pick a tag.
That's how Utah was too.
Yeah, exactly. That's how Utah was. So it's like people have talked about that here, and hey, what if you pick archery or rifle, and then go from there. So it's like, well, if you're a bow hunter, you're gonna go out and archery hunt, and if you don't kill one, you're done. And so it's like you could do that for elk, and then deer. Like I guess you could do the same thing, but 99% of the people are probably going to pick a rifle for deer. So then it could get real busy, maybe, or just as busy, I guess, as it is now. But the elk thing might split people up a little bit. Man, it could make for some really good hunting. And I honestly I want to shoot one with a bow anyway. So for me, I would be all about it, honestly. And I would just go archery hunting and call it a day.
Yeah.
And I think it could help bring Montana back and make some really even better hunting opportunities for elk and stuff than there already is. I mean, it's great, but like it could make it really good. So,
I don't know. I mean, we could spitball ideas for all Western states to. It's funny when you're talking about regulations and ideas that you feel like would improve the hunting or reduce hunter numbers in certain units or whatever. There's always people out there that have like the exact opposite position. And they get really protective over it.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I'm nervous about, honestly, about moving to Montana is like, I have to dig into the Montana regs next year. And they're a lot more complicated than Idaho's. Idaho's easy, man. They're like, hey, yeah, go get a tag and you just hunt north of the highway. That's it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, differences in how the units are broken down, how to get tags, all this stuff in Montana that I'm going to have to learn. And it's not good for a guy that has the IQ of a lizard. for me to try to dig into this. So I might have to call you and pick your brain on some of this stuff, man.
Not a problem. Anytime. Happy to answer. But
Well,
there is a lot.
there is, yeah, and I think, yeah, it can't be that bad. Shoot,
No.
I let's switch gears here and talk a little bit of November whitetail hunting, because I meant what I said in the intro there, man. You're one of the most successful whitetail guys that I know for hunting like public land or private land. I mean, public, private, whatever. But out here in the West, and I think there's like this caveat to that, where hunting whitetail in the West, especially on public land in the mountains, is way different than what you see on like a lot of these like Sportsman Channel kind of shows where they're hunting in the Midwest over a field, and they know every little deer and have names for them and stuff. It's a whole different ball game out here. Sure. And I think that there's a lot of people that are like me 5, 6, 7 years ago. Before I used to kind of snub whitetail, man. I used to think that was like kind of a sissy deer to hunt, because I was a big time mule deer guy. And man, the more I hunt them, the more I love these suckers, man. There is like just nothing smarter than a freaking mature whitetail buck in the mountains. There is just something special about them, man. And I'm really excited about hunting whitetail this year because of circumstantially what's going on here. But let's talk about whitetail, but give everybody like an overview. I want to know like your whitetail resume so people understand who's talking here.
Yeah.
Like this is if I was passing a torch to brag, here's your bragging torch.
Yeah, we're not going to go quite that deep, but yeah, I mean, I've hunted whitetails a long time, in the West here, but spent a lot of time in the mountains, about 18 years straight, just hunting those things. And I mean, I've learned a lot and, had a lot of failures along the way that kind of helped shape into some better years. But I mean, I've still had failures. Well, last year, for example, I was after a couple specific bucks, and, I guess it comes with the territory when you start kind of being picky and whatnot, but I hunted pretty dang hard last year and did everything in my power. And it just came down to it. It's like, I didn't fill my tag last year, could have, but I would rather be picky and let some of these deer go and grow up, just another year or two. And it's funny saying that, because guys, on public land and there's other hunters all over the place. And some of the spots I hunt, I mean, if you went there right this minute during general rifle season and seen all the guys, you'd be like, there's no way I'm going to archery hunt this, ever. I mean, it's just, it's a war zone. And then, but you go back with a bow and you're like, holy smokes, like, there's still big bucks, here to hunt. But you run that risk of, like last year I had bears, cats, and wolves on my trail cameras. Every single trail camera had some form of predator. And then, but I, had several on numerous cameras, and, it's tough, because it's like, you're like, oh, well, that buck right now is like 4.5 years old, which reaches a nice kind of mature state. Usually they're starting to look pretty dang good. And then, you're like, oh, I'm going to let him go for another year and see what he does. And it's like, man, you run that risk, of he's looking really good, like, something could get him or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And you just got to be okay with that. So it's, that's kind of what happened last year. And we had a pretty difficult, I think, winter the year before a little bit. And some of the predators, and I lost like 3 big bucks last year that I had been watching grow for years. And, I was like, they were 6.5, 7.5-year-old deer. I'm talking like just big, mature bucks.
Oh, wow.
They were all gone.
Are you talking back in Washington, or like, are these Montana bucks?
No, these are Washington deer.
Yeah.
And they were gone. And so I just kind of started hunting some new spots, still had a couple bucks, but I decided to let a few go and didn't fill my tag. But I've spent a lot of time up there. I've killed some good ones. And the year before, I shot that big split brow buck, and he's 7.5 years old, and had that buck, hunted him the year before, and then he got bigger at 7.5, and that deer's 163, and he's a nice, just big, mountain whitetail. And he's a cool deer. And so it's like, when you shoot one like that, and then the next year it's like, man, you're really striving. I kind of always look for like that 150 plus mark. Like I feel like that's a just big, mature. You're getting up there. I mean, 150
Oh,
is a
totally.
big, and so I'm always kind of looking for that number personally. And, every year I'll have a couple of them, it seems like, on camera here and there, but takes a lot of work to find them. And, that's kind of what I'm after, but it's been fun. We've killed a ton of deer between my dad and sister and I, and well, Kylie should have had probably the second biggest buck we have in the house. And she, got unlucky and just hit the void and never got him, but he was a cool deer. And so, I mean, hey, it is what it is. We've had some fun, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like I love going back just for the chase.
Have you hunted whitetail anywhere besides the West?
Nope. I've spent all my time hunting them up in Northeast Washington, north central to Northeast Washington, it's kind of up in that area. And then, I've hunted them in Idaho and Montana, but I've never been anywhere like outside. So I've kind of been in that bubble here in the Northwest. I really, really, really want to go to like the Midwest and go experience some of that, because just to do it, but it's so different. Like hunting them on the farms and having hundreds of deer or even 50 deer. Like, I mean, I'm lucky to get 50 deer on all my cameras. I would say I'm lucky to get 30 deer on all my cameras all freaking fall,
Oh yeah,
so,
me too, man.
Yeah,
I usually have, like, where I run cameras, there's like 8 bucks and 4 of them are targets, if that makes sense.
yeah, pretty much. It's exactly how the game is, and versus having 30 bucks, on a farm back, in the Midwest. But I don't know. Like Dirk and Phelps last year, they went and hunted Kansas and hunted someplace, and like the stories I'm hearing, I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm like, you're seeing like more deer in one field in one day than it's like I get to see, all fall.
I know, man. It drives me crazy. I was talking with Chris Rowe, and he manages some wildlife habitat thing to grow these big bucks, and he had this opportunity to come to Kansas with him. I had to like pay I don't remember what the fee was. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't working out for me timing wise. So I'd love to go hunt with Chris, because Chris has like this biologist mind, and I like learning from that side of it. Why these bucks are doing what they're doing, and he's got this perfect setup out there. And one day I'm going to make it happen. I don't know. It might be next year, might not be, but either way. There's like this huge difference, and I don't know, and maybe something about this. I don't know if there's like what kind of behavioral differences there are, compared to, I've hunted deer in North Carolina, and they were different than these whitetail here in like North Idaho. They just, from a sense of like their patterns and where they moved and times of day that they moved, they were super active at like midday. And obviously the size, man, they're like big golden retrievers in coastal North Carolina, right. Where I was stationed. And that's actually where I shot my first whitetail. And anyways, I do you know if there's like major behavioral differences or just general, what they like, movement patterns, stuff like that, Midwest to West?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, like totally. From guys that I've talked to from hunting some of the other stuff, like I'm a personal like preference guy. Like I sit in the stand all day. Like, I'm talking, I get in at an hour before daylight and I don't leave my stand until dark. So it's like I sit all day long, and that's what I do. And I mean, I have a lot of deer movement, and some of my biggest bucks, like I'll see from 10 to 2 midday, and they'll be out cruising looking for a doe or whatnot. And I've had a lot of good luck in that kind of midday time frame, but I've also killed some right at, in the morning, the first hour, and I've killed them, the last hour. The last hour is really good, obviously, because they're getting on their feet out laying around. But
Last hour is my favorite.
Yeah, I love that time. And it always feels really deery. It's like it's getting dark. You feel like a big buck's just gonna come cruising by. And yeah, I love that time personally, but I don't know. And that's I think kind of why partially I do want to go hunt the Midwest or like go back somewhere, over there, is just to experience and see what's different, or those deer
Yeah.
coming out in the morning and the evening. Well, they're out all night, but you catch them in the morning at daylight, and then they're leaving those fields and stuff to head to bed. And then, hunt them in the evening, when they're coming out to feed type of thing. Or can you hunt them all day? Like, I'd like to know, but I mean, where I'm hunting in thick timber and stuff, they kind of seem to move, all day. I mean, I've had deer literally between stands, like all hours of the day.
Yeah,
So.
I have too. And I want this conversation to kind of, help people that not everybody is. Do you know Troy Pottinger?
But yeah, I know who Troy is. He's someone I would love to go hunt whitetails with.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked a few times, like a little bit, but I would love to just go and like hunt with him and just see like what Troy does, because I have things that I know I do, and we do a lot of things I'm sure that are very similar. And
Yeah.
I mean, we both had a lot of luck, but man, it's like one of those things I would love to just like pick that guy's brain in person, just do it.
The thing is he would love to probably do that with you too. He's such a great down to earth kind of guy. But I bring him up because like when I think just absolute Western whitetail killing machines, I think of you and I think of Troy. And so where I'm going with that is not everybody is Jon Gabrio and Troy, right? And so what I want this discussion to kind of go towards is for those folks out there. You'd mentioned earlier, maybe some guys out there, maybe they only have a week, or they only have the weekends, or maybe evenings during the week. I want to try to help them be a little bit more successful without knocking over spikes and 2 points or whatever. Not, and again, I'm not judging that. So, save your nasty emails. I'm just saying most people with a brain understand that when you go hunting, the goal is to try to get the biggest thing you can get. And, again, I'm not judging it if you shoot a little one. So every time I say that, John, I get a handful of really nasty emails about, well, I'm filling the freezer up. Damn you. It's okay if I shoot a 2 point. I don't care. I don't care if somebody's shooting a 2 point. I am saying that most people have this objective to shoot a bigger buck, right? Yeah. And that's just, this is like, it shouldn't be controversial. Most people want to shoot a little bit bigger buck. But that said, not everybody's going to go out and shoot a 6.5, 7.5-year-old buck because, time restrictions, skill level, that kind of thing. I want to talk to the folks that are interested in getting like a nice 4 point or better, right? When it comes to whitetail. And I want to pick your brain on that. So I'm going to kind of roll through this with like a series of questions, kind of like I do with the School of September. And one to start off with is, when you think of whitetail hunting in the mountains, public land, what's going to be like your key week in November for you? What week is going to be most optimal for people to see bucks cruising for does?
I would say Thanksgiving week, hands down. That because the week before, a lot of the big bucks that I have at least will go on lockdown. You might catch one if you get a doe coming by. Like, I'm usually hunting around that time, but it's tough. And then all of a sudden around like Thanksgiving, the 22nd, 23rd, 4th, somewhere in there, you'll get them breaking up off those does, and all of a sudden they start cruising pretty hard. So that kind of 22nd through the end of November, man, it can be like lights out.
Sweet. Okay, let's now from that question, let's back up in time a little bit and talk about like preseason preparation, from scouting to setting cameras to setting tree stands or ground blinds or whatever. Do you have a preference on like a tree stand versus a ground blind, or what do you recommend for something like that?
Yeah, so I always use tree stands, and that was kind of my go-to forever. Like I love sitting in a tree, and I always set, well, we can get deep on that, but I set my tree stands anywhere between about 22 to 25, 26 feet. And the thermals kind of change once you get over about that 22 foot range. So I stopped getting winded as much. But
Mhm.
uh ground blinds, man, you can get away with a lot. And like I've had, once we started using those and my sister started hunting and Kylie, and um, we started using ground blinds. I love them because one, if it happens to rain, you're dry. Two, you can kind of get away with a lot more movement, especially if you're sitting there all day and you got to get up and use the bathroom, or if you need to eat lunch or whatever, you're not fiddling around hanging off the side of the tree. Um, so I do like them for that. But I the thing with a ground blind is I do feel like they hide your scent pretty dang well. And I mean, man, we've had deer come in and some days and the wind's blowing a little bit, and I'm like, I don't know, shoot, this isn't good. Like, and you
Yeah,
can
me
watch,
too, man.
yeah, you can watch the wind, on like a piece of moss or something, and it's blowing right there. And I'm like, oh, they're gonna wind us. And then all of a sudden they'll walk right by, and it's like, huh. So I do love, and I'll be honest, once I started using ground blinds, it opened up a handful of areas to hunt that I never would have hunted before because the trees weren't tall enough to hang a stand.
Hmm.
So like that was a plus. So honestly, now I use a mixture of both, and like I love it because it's like, especially if I know the weather is going to be bad one day, or like raining, or the snow is going to melt off trees all day and I don't want to get soaked, I'll go sit a blind.
Yeah,
And so,
I love
yeah,
ground blinds, man. I'm glad to hear you say that. I love the ground blinds. I don't know why. I like you said, I've gotten a lot closer to deer sitting in a ground blind. Well, I can't even make a comparison, dude. I'll make a confession right now. I have never sat in a tree stand, never. and
gotcha.
and it's because I feel like I don't have the kind of patience it would take to sit in a tree stand. Where if I'm in a ground blind, I could like take a book.
Mhm.
Anyway, I don't mean to get you off track.
No, you're good. And that's the thing. And another thing is safety. Like my daddy's 76, and I mean, dude, him
Mm,
climbing up a tree now, and when you have all the layers on and everything, like, gets a little sketchy. And so for him, it's more of a safety thing. And Kylie or anyone, like I'm looking out for safety wise too. And ground blinds are definitely safer, definitely get away with more. The only thing I'll say that I've kind of found with ground blinds over the years, and take this for what it's worth, but it's like if you have an area that you're going to hunt and you're able to take that weekend off, and depending on how far you have to drive from your house to set up or whatever, it's worth going that couple weekends prior and go set some blinds up and leave them to let the deer get used to them. Or a tree stand, I could find a spot that day and be like, yeah, this is great, and go cut some, limbs or whatever, and like hang a tree, a stand up and have a set. And
man, good
then
point.
you got a place to sit because the deer aren't spooked. Where I've set blinds up and I've had a couple trails that before, I mean, there was bucks just hammering this trail, and throw a ground blind in. And I mean, I've had does come by and they just absolutely freak out. And like, I mean, they're like, what is this? And they'll back up and they stomp and they're doing their whole looking and blowing and really investigating, and they'll spook and run off. And I'm like, great. But then about a week or two later, they're back to normal. So
Yeah.
I like to get ground blinds in early and get them brushed in and do all that. Where tree stands, I can get away with a lot more and a lot less invasive, I feel like, in a stand.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is why I like having you on, man. You've always got something that is it like triggers a thought of mine that I've never really thought of before. So I've never thought of that aspect with a tree stand. And I have one. It's interesting. I have a brand new tree stand. I've never even used it. Anyway, um going back to the like season prep kind of questions, when like if a guy were to go out in the summer months and try to scout for an area to look for a place to whitetail hunt in November, what's he going to be looking for? What should he be looking for?
I think, and this kind of comes down to spending a lot of time in that area, but during the summer, I'm gonna pick out and some areas with some ridge systems that are gonna kind of run down, and maybe you get 3-4 ridges that'll come down to, connect in the bottom, and you might get one finger, ridge where it gives deer these travel corridors to be able to kind of come down the mountains and meet a bench or a spot where they're going to converge and hang out. And then I'm going to start looking for scrapes. And there's certain things that are called community scrapes. And Troy's pretty heavy on this too. And so am I, where you can go in and these deer will hit these scrapes literally like year round. And it's more of a, hey, I'm in the area, you're in the area, who's around type of thing. And you can kind of even make your own and turn them into, the big community scrape and bring other deer to the area. And, I'm going to obviously be looking for rubs, stuff like that, and find some swamps or whatnot, or like areas where there's pinch points, and I'm going to go in there and start hiking, and I'm going to try to find these scrapes. I'm going to try to find rubs, see if there's a lot of rubs, if there is deer sign around, trails with lots of deer tracks. It's fun to go like, early in the spring before the grass is really green up, so you can still even see scrapes and stuff from the year before on the ground. And then you'll still see deer tracks and trails at that time, when the grass is still kind of in that yellowish like stage from the snow melt. And I just start tearing areas apart. Like, I'll pick out 2, 3, 4 areas on Google Earth, tear them apart on Onyx, and then look for those kind of key pinch points, and then I'll go in and just start hiking. And I'm really looking for rubs, scrapes, and obviously at the same time too, spots I can hunt. Is this somewhere I can hike into? Can I get to this spot kind of fairly, undetected and easy, and, make this one work? Can I hang a stand or set a blind in this spot, and get a shot? And, I'm kind of absorbing all that as I'm walking through these spots.
Okay. You know what always comes to mind when it comes to whitetail for me, John, like when I think about scouting for elk or scouting for mule deer, or even trying to find a good bear spot, there's like this for me. I can go into a brand new unit that somewhere I've never been, and I can always figure out where the mule deer are going to be, and I can always figure out where the elk are going to be, and I can usually figure out where the bear is going to be.
Yep.
Whitetail are a little different for me, and I don't know if it's a me thing, or if that's like somebody like you that's got a much better track record with whitetail bucks. Is that something that is a thing, or is it just my own personal ignorance? I just don't know what I'm looking for, kind of thing. If I'm going into like a new unit, why can't I quickly identify where I think the mule deer are going to be, or I'm sorry, not mule deer, whitetail, where I can do that with every other species I hunt? Is that just a me thing?
No, I mean, I've been in areas before where I'm like, oh, there should be deer here, and there's nothing, or, and here's the one thing. I think with like elk, we know they're going to kind of be in a certain area or look for burns or this or that, and water sources, and, timber feeding. Like, it's different. Mule deer, you're going to be looking those higher, elevations, burns, that type of stuff. But it's like whitetail. Dude, I've seen whitetails clear from the river bottoms all the way to the top of the peaks at,
I know. Yeah. I think that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things that, they range so far, but I've kind of found like, elevation wise, and this kind of depends on the country that you're hunting and where you're at, but like that 3 to like 7,000 foot range, somewhere in there. So I try to kind of focus there, but then I start thinking about November, and I'm like, okay, if the snow hits and these animals are moving down, where are they going to go? Well, usually late November, the snow's hit, it's up high. They're going to shove those deer down, and you're going to be looking like that 3 to 5,000 foot range. So I'll kind of start weeding out some of that higher elevation stuff, because I know the snow is going to come in and it's going to shove them down. So instantly I start going down lower and looking in some of those kind of that range, and then, go from there. The one thing I will say, it is kind of tough, because I mean, there's areas where I've seen deer like crossing a road or something, when I'm like driving around, just,
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
a spot. I'm like, why is there a whitetail right here? Like there shouldn't
Right.
even be here. And so, I mean, I found bucks in places that they shock me. I mean, even in places that I don't expect them. So I don't think there's really any like, well, I mean, there's definitely areas that I know, and because I've hunted them so much, and I'm like, there's going to be deer right here. But it's I feel like you can find a whitetail in so many places that I'm kind of more in the leave no stone unturned, and I check everything versus like, oh, I'm just going to go to this little pocket because I think there's deer here. Like, no, I'm covering everything that I can.
Let me tell you about the show's newest sponsor, Juniper Mountain Coffee. You can check them out at junipermountaintradingpost.com and check out everything that they sell. I really like what they say on their website. And guys, if you are a coffee connoisseur like me, this here American company that's not run by a bunch of wokesters might be worth checking out for you. What they say is, we roast coffee for those loyal to a lost way of life, those that never back down in the face of adversity, the ones that keep their word, treat people with respect, and still believe in the importance of hard work. We offer some of the best coffee in the world and look forward to earning a spot in your cup. And they have definitely earned a spot in my cup. Whether you like light roast, dark roast, ground already, or not ground, you just want to order it fresh. And they even have those little pod things for those of you that just make one cup at a time. I drink too much coffee for that, so I don't do that. And they also have a cold brew. But it's a great company, great story. You guys are going to dig these guys. Check them out at junipermountaintradingpost.com. Let them know the Western Huntsman sent you. This is that time of year when it's really time to turn up the heat on your scouting. We're going through summer. Season's going to be here before you know it. And I don't care if you're going after mule deer, whitetail, the mighty wapiti, whatever it is. Scouting is imperative, and it makes it much easier when you use trail cameras where they are allowed. And let me tell you something. I like trail cameras that are easy to use, functional, and have good quality pictures. That brings us to Spypoint. Spypoint trail cameras. You can check them out at spypoint.com. And it doesn't matter if you're looking to do one of the cell cams, like the Flex X or the Flex G36 or the LM2. They have some great deals on their website. Like right now, if you check them out, they've got some clearance cameras going on the cell cams. You can also get a cell link that attaches to any regular cell camera and will transmit pictures right to your phone. The other trail cameras, if you're way out in the backcountry and don't have phone service out there, the Force Pro S and the Force Pro are my go-to cameras. I absolutely love them. If you guys saw the pictures from this last bear season, they were really high-quality pictures, and they were all done with that Force Pro camera. So check it out, guys, at spypoint.com, and let them know the Western Huntsman sent ya. Yeah, I love the way you explain that, and because I think that there, especially for any of you new hunters out there that are thinking about chasing some whitetail this November, man, like John said, I have where I live down kind of right on the Clark Fork River, right in Montana, and it's, as far as Montana goes, lower elevation, kind of thing, and I've got a monster whitetail that lives on our street. Like we live on this dirt road, right? And these are all like 5 to 20 acre tracts or whatever. And everybody's kind of the same as, they're like these homesteading type folks, like we are. Mm-hmm. And you drive down the road and man, my neighbor has this, I swear they're like, they probably have a name for him and about to put a collar on him or something. He's like a pet. He's just a freaking monster. Like, you were saying 150-ish class. This is like a 170-ish, 180-ish deer. I'll take a picture of him and send it to you. I love seeing this. I see him every morning. Anyway, but getting back to what you were saying, the disparity between like where you'll find a big mule deer buck versus where you won't is there. There's a lot of disparity there. There's consistency that you can count on, I guess, is a better way of putting that. That if you find some mule deer does, you're probably going to find a 2-point or a 3-point buck running around with them, right?
Yep.
And that is just not the case with whitetail, from a sense of there's no predictability, there's no consistency. Sometimes, sure, they might have a buck running around. Sometimes you're going to see 3 or 4 bucks running around. Sometimes you're not going to see any deer, but it could be at, sea level all the way up to 10,000, 11,000 feet elevation. And I think that's one of the difficult parts to that. And I think that's also what makes whitetail so exciting is like there's this unpredictability factor that I've got with them where, man, they'll surprise the crap out of me. In fact, I set a mule deer focused camera up on the mountain last year, thinking that I'd find some. I know mule deer live up there, right? And so that's kind of what I was looking for, and I did. Sure. There was a few decent bucks on there, and hit the camera. But what surprised me is the caliber of whitetail bucks that would come in like an hour behind the muleys, and it just like these are bucks that you just don't see when you're up there. Like I'll see the muleys, I'll see those guys, I'll see them working across the ridge, right at sundown or whatever. I never see these whitetail buck, and I don't see whitetail does up there either that high. Man, I totally got off track. What the hell was I going to ask you?
I don't know where you're going with the question, but I think you were just talking about how like the deer are so diverse in the country that they cover.
Man. Yeah, and that diversity is what kind of makes them really fun, because people are there's like two kind of questions that we get on the show here quite a bit, and I don't care if it's like elk hunting, mule deer, whitetail, whatever, but there's 2 types of questions. I get questions where people are kind of the implication is they're looking for an easy button, like how do I just go find a whitetail buck, versus the type of question, which is the ones that I like to get, and I because I like kind of that philosophical side of hunting. But they're more like, hey, I'm going out and I'm looking at north face, east face slopes, and I'm not seeing any deer trails on these slopes, but I'm seeing them on this south face slope, and I thought that was wrong, and I wanted to get your take on as to why they're running this south face slope. Now, look, for those of you listening, I don't know. I have killed whitetail on south face, north face, east face, and west face, and so I don't know if there's a pattern there. Do you have some insight on that, John? Like, do you have like if you know how we always find elk on north face slopes kind of thing? Is there something like that related to whitetail?
I mean, I definitely, like, same as you, like I've killed bucks on all sorts of different faces, and so I mean I can't really sit here and say yeah or no, but I will say I've killed a lot of deer in November on a more southwest like type slope, if you will. Mainly, I think a little bit because if I'm hunting and it's snowing or whatever, or if the snow starts melting off, it's kind of the area that they'll get burned off, to get a little bit of grass that'll come through or through the trees, kind of seem to melt a little quicker. And so I've had a lot of luck on kind of looking for some stuff and trails that, are coming down those ridges on those south facing slopes that time of year. And it definitely seems to work. Now, that being said, I've got one stand that's total opposite on the north side of a mountain, and I've got some big bucks on that camera. And, it's kind of like, I think that they live in that like all year long. So they're more in that, hanging out on the north face in the summer, and they're staying cool, and then it's thicker. And so they kind of like to hang out there, and then they'll leave there. And I've got the same bucks wrap around the backside of this one mountain, and I've had them on the south facing camera, the same night. And I mean, I had one buck, like he went 4 miles in a couple hours, clear around the backside of this mountain. He showed up on another camera. And I mean, so obviously it doesn't matter, like to him, but the south face generally, I've definitely had a little bit better luck personally finding the deer on those sets.
Yeah, I would definitely second that, especially the later you get into November. Let's see, I'm trying to go through my questions here. Sorry, I got distracted. My chickens got out of their chicken coop, dude, and they're shitting all over my back deck, and I can see them out the window. It's driving me crazy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're getting out. Anyway, do you let's talk about calling for a minute. Strategically now in the state of Washington, are you have you ever done like any baiting of whitetail? What do you have like a strategy that would be your go-to in terms of you've got calling, you've got baiting, you can use scents, you can use just trails, and corridors, whatever you want to call it. What's your go-to strategy when it comes to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've kind of done a little bit of everything. And this varies on my spots. Like I have a few spots where I've found some of these ridge systems where the trails come down and found a natural bench with community scrapes and stuff during the summer, and they hit those spots during the fall rutting and stuff like that. And it's this one spot in particular. It's just this natural, perfect bench up on this side of this mountain, and the deer seem to hang out there a lot. And it's more trail based. They're going to come by, they're going to hit these scrapes, they're going to, check it out. It's just a really killer spot. But I like looking for spots like that because I feel like you're a little less invasive, less undetected, versus you go throw a pile of bait out on the ground. It's like, yeah, the does will come in, they're going to eat the crap out of it. But also at the same time, man, some of those big bucks, like they come in and they are so weary. They're like, what is that? Like, and even though the does are there, they might not even come over and eat it. Like I've literally
it's not natural for them. Yeah.
Exactly. Like the does and fawns will come in small bucks and they'll eat the crap out of it. You throw some alfalfa out or whatever, and they'll eat it and they'll stand there all day until it's gone. But the big bucks, like I've literally watched them come in, circle it, sit there, look, circle, watch a doe, and they'll stand out there at 20, 30 yards or farther away and just, what is going on? Like what? Nope.
Yeah.
You're good. You eat, you get fat and happy. I'm going to stay over here. And so I'll kind of play my tree stand setup or blind or whatever accordingly, knowing that they might come in and hit a secondary trail. Bucks kind of the big ones seem to have their own trail that they like to walk. And it's usually, 20 to 40 yards off of the main deer trail. And all of a sudden you'll see this big buck track and he'll kind of stay off of it and usually downwind so he can catch the scent of the other deer walking the main trail. Mm-hmm. And then he'll kind of pick up on that. And I've literally watched bucks do that and walk this trail and, killed them doing that. But we've called, done the whole thing. I mean, I've called bucks in. I was actually walking into a stand one day, was going in at 10. I got over there late in the morning and I was like, I'm going to go sit the rest of the day. Walking in, and my big target buck is literally standing right below my tree stand as I'm walking in. And I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. And so he spooks, runs off. I'm like, well, I shouldn't even sit here, but there's another buck I knew in the area. And I was like, he might come by. So I climb up in the tree stand, get all set, and I grab my doe bleat and I hit that thing 3 times. And that big buck, all of a sudden, here he comes. I hear sticks and he's crashing down off the hill, running right at my tree.
Really?
And craziest thing ever. And I was
just that surprises the crap out of me, man.
Yeah, of course. That's the only time I've ever had that happen. Never had it happen again. So,
wow.
But he ran right down to the tree, 26 yards, and stops behind this tree. I'm at full draw. And he's looking around and can see his head kind of turning, looking out the other side of the tree. Need him to literally take just a step or two. And he just turns and then he just walked back off up the hill. I never got a shot.
Oh,
and
dang.
I was like so depressed because, I mean, he was a big buck. He had big split brows and cool deer, and never got him. And I've done doe bleats since, and I've had a couple small bucks, come sniffing in, their head on the ground, doing the whole run, walking in. And then, but I've also had a lot of times where it doesn't work. And then I've rattled. My dad's rattled. He had a buck come flying in one day and ran right in and just stops 20 yards from the tree looking around like, where's the fight? And I mean, we've kind of had luck doing it all in scents, hanging, the scent gland stuff in the tree or like spraying the licking branches. And I've had bucks, and does too come in and lick them and kind of do their thing and make a scrape. And I've done it all over the years. And I think one thing that I never count out is I always have all those things with me at all times. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe the scrape thing hasn't working for a day or two, but let's try some calling. Let's, and depending, like I said, where I'm at, because some places it's far, like I'm not going to pack bait, but like, or if it's closer, I might be like, well, let's throw some bait out on the ground and just see if we can get a doe to come by, and like suck them in.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you can never have too many tools in your toolbox. And so I always have like everything with me at all times. I could rattle, I could do doe bleats, do the scents, bait, whatever. And I keep my options open.
Let me ask you this, man. If you had you had to make a decision, there was like some, maybe the game warden came by and said, hey, there's a new law and you can only pick either rattling, a grunt, or a doe bleat. Which one would you choose?
Ooh.
That's a tough one, huh?
Dude, that's a hard one. That's a good question. I would say, man, I'd get rid of the doe bleat. I've had more luck doing little like tending grunts, acting like, there's a buck there and he's on a doe and, or there's another buck in the area and like he's doing the little tending grunts or fighting or like whatever. Honestly, I'd probably pick a grunt. Just because I feel like I've had over the years way more response to that, or like do a grunt or two and all of a sudden like you'll get a deer like stand out there looking, like you'll see one, like, versus like fight. He's got to want to fight. So I would pick a grunt all day.
Okay, good, man, because that like vindicates me. That's how I feel too. Especially, I got to throw Phelps a little shout out. Those new grunt tubes, they've got the alpha and the beta.
Oh man,
they're freaking solid, man. They are not those chintzy ass plastic crappy grunt tubes that like don't work unless it's over 32 degrees. Yeah, and so I've had lots of success with grunting. I've had very little to rattling. In fact, I can only think of like 2 bucks and they were both little bucks that came in on using a rattle. But I don't know, other people swear by them, so I'm just kind of like, whatever. I like the thought that you said about having all of these weapons in your toolbox. You have the bleat, you have the grunt tube, you have a rattle, a set of antlers to rattle with, or whatever, one of those little bags. I've never used one of those.
Yep, Phelps has one of those too.
What's that?
Phelps has one now too, the little rattle bag.
Oh, they do?
Yep, they got that, and then
dude, I'm gonna poke Dirk right in the eyeball for not telling me he has a rattle bag. I didn't know.
Yeah, he's got one of those, and then but I will admit, we were talking about Phelps's grunt tubes though. The kind of rubber exhaust hose on those, man, they sound so good and so real versus some of the plastic ones. I truly, like last year I was using all of them. I had literally everything, but the alpha and the beta both, man, those sound, I used them both and kind of tuned them. They got that little tune board in there. You can move it and man, they sound so freaking good. And I just was like, yeah, you made a good call. Like you got a good one here. So.
I have never had, because I want people to understand that maybe have never done this kind of thing, calling for whitetail. It is not like calling coyotes or calling elk. It's not like you're trying to just piss this whitetail buck off and you're going to entice him to come in and have a big brawl with you kind of thing. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jon, but I feel like the goal with that, with using a call like a grunt call, is triggering a little bit of curiosity for having a buck come check it out. And they're going to be way more cautious than some fired up bull that's responding to your bugle. And same thing with a coyote. I am like a pretty prolific coyote caller, and it's just not the same kind of game. With when you're talking about calling deer, it's so hit or miss. And in the past, and again, I'm not trying to toot Phelps's horn too much here, but in the past, it has been very inconsistent when it comes to these grunt tubes for me. maybe they work every once in a while, and if they do, it's most likely going to be a younger buck. With that beta call, I used that beta one. It was like money, and I underestimated it the first time I took it out. But it worked way more than any other deer call that I've ever used. Like, and this is just like an authentic review of how these calls work. And I think I'm just pulling it up on the web. I'm trying to find that bag you were talking about.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I made everything for it.
Deer calls. Okay, so you got the Omega hybrid grunt call, beta call. You have the alpha. I've not tried the alpha call.
That one's a little deeper.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Smash and Clash rattle bag right here, $25.
That's what it's called. That's what it's called. I made the logo for it.
I'm going to check the logo and check your work here. Hang on. Okay, I approve, man. You did a pretty good job. Maybe that antler's not quite big enough on that third tine, but no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we could have went a little bigger. Dirk could eat that one, so you can yell at Dirk.
It's probably a Dirk deer.
Mm-hmm.
No. Do you want to pick on Dirk? He's always picking on you, man.
Hey, we could, but we could leave that for another day. He spent like 10 days living in my garage this September, maybe a few more, and we had a lot of laughs. So
I love Dirk. So the more I pick on somebody, it usually means I like you more.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside of vocalizations, calling, I know we're running a little long here. You good on time for a minute?
Yeah, I'm good.
Outside of vocalizations, calling, grunt, bleats, using. Have you ever used one of those little? What were those Primos cans? You flip them upside down.
Yep. Yep.
I actually called in a little 3-point with one of those once. What other tools are out there for somebody who is not super tuned into whitetail hunting, but they want to be? Are there other tools out there? Whether it's calling, whether it's in states that you could bait, and when we say baiting, folks, you really got to be careful with your regs. I don't believe baiting is legal in Montana, and I know it's not in Idaho. So other Western states, you got to check your regs on that kind of stuff. But we've talked about baiting using scents like buck fever synthetics and whatnot. We've talked about calling. Is there a tool that I'm leaving out that you can think of?
Well, I mean, a big one for me is trail cameras.
Yes.
Like to me, running trail cameras gets me more intel than like anything else, so I think like I rely more. I mean, granted, we're not talking about really calling them in and like how you're going to get one in to kill one, but like for me, knowing what's around and knowing that, oh, hey, yeah, there is a big buck that's running around here or hitting a scrape, or there's pile of does in this area. Like I know a buck's going to show up, or if there is one, like I'll start setting cameras around it, trying to find out, if maybe I'm missing him or whatever. But, yeah, like to me, a trail camera on whitetail hunting is like your number one tool. Like you better get a handful of them and start just scattering those things out. And sometimes I'll set a trail camera on a trail, and then I'll set another trail camera on the same trail behind it, or facing it, or like going a different direction. So I've got like two angles or like something, or, trying to make sure. And I've actually caught deer a handful of times that walked by and tripped the second one that I thought they should have hit the first one and never did. And I'm like, man, I'm glad I had that second camera up, So, and I usually only do that in like very targeted spots where, it's kind of, I know that there's maybe high traffic, or like, if I'm out on a scrape or a rub line or something like that. But, trail camera to me is like your number one tool. You better just invest in them, have them. And if you can do the cell cam thing, obviously some states do, you better check that. I'm not sure, like they're legal everywhere, but everywhere I seem to set up, I never have cell service. So I haven't really even ever got to use one. Some buddies have, and they love them, but, I think that would be a great tool too, just because
you've never used a cell cam?
Everywhere I've ever set well, let me back up. I've set cameras in other places that I've had service. I just didn't have one, but 90% of my spots that I hunt whitetails, I've never had cell phone service when I end up setting a camera, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a waste. So I just never invested in them. So,
I just want to chime in with one thing on that, because there is, so on my property here where we live in Montana, there is no cell service. Okay. In order to even make a phone call, I have to do Wi-Fi calling and all that kind of stuff. There's no cell phone service here. So if my internet goes down, I'm like completely dead in the water. But I have a Flex G36 from Spypoint.
mm-hmm.
And so this Spypoint camera, what happens with it is it's not like I had another brand at my last property. I love my cell cams, man. It like my phone will kind of ding and it'll be 3 a.m. I'll be dead asleep. You could drive a truck through my bedroom and I wouldn't wake up. But if that little ding went off, I would be awake checking that camera, because I wanted to, and man, I had some monster freaking whitetail coming through my property last year that never showed up in the daylight. And I ended up shooting kind of I don't know, he was 3.5, 4.5-year-old buck. Anyways, this Flex G36 it is not like the other trail cameras where you have to select, okay, I want Verizon service or AT&T or whatever. It will just find what service it can through whatever providers in the area. And so I have Verizon with my cell phone, and I've got no cell service on our property. But I put this Flex G36 out, and I don't know what service it's picking up, but I get pictures 2 or 3 times a day. Well, depending on how many times my damn dog goes running in front of it. But you don't need as good of cell signals as you may think with this Spypoint camera. It does a really good job. I'm super impressed with it. It does a really good job. I should hook you up with one, man. If you haven't had a Flex G36.
That's good to know. I've never even messed with one, to be honest with you. I mean, but that's super intriguing. The thing that I would love to use, or the cell camera thing, and what I was going to say, some of my buddies that have them, you can stay out of the area, like, a lot more, because you're like, oh, hey, I'm getting pictures of this deer. It's coming through at this time, this and that. And you're not scenting up the area. You're not in there, checking cameras and making yourself known. Especially if you are going to go hunt, it's like, hey, like, this deer's running by, I'm going to go in here and just hunt this thing, versus having to get intel and then hunt, And so, trust me, I would love to run one. It is what it is.
I'm going to look into it. I think Spypoint is one of our sponsors on our show here. So, but I didn't want to say that in the beginning to make people think I'm like promoting it. I don't get anything if somebody just goes and buys a Spypoint. So just FYI, it legitimately is a really good camera, and there's some other really good cameras out there with other brands. But what I like about this one with Spypoint is it picks up multiple different phone services. So I'm going to see if I could hook you up with one, man. Let me find out. What the camera question I was going to ask you is, when you set your cameras and you go check the SD cards and you're getting all this data, like, okay, I've got this buck coming in like consistently between 8 and 9 a.m. And then this buck randomly is showing up at all sorts of different times of day. And then I've got this funky buck with the drop tine on the left. He's coming in consistently only between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What do you do with that information? How do you decipher it? And how do you hunt based on the information you're learning from your cameras?
Yeah. So I guess what I do, and I kind of start looking at that, is, what deer is more consistent? And then, do I want to kill that deer? And then, if it's, like, I want to hunt him, obviously I'm going to kind of really start focusing in on that and hunting him pretty tough. And then if there's a deer that's showing up late at night, then I'm going to start questioning that, because I'm like, okay, he's working his way over here and he's getting here, but he's not showing up to the party till, middle of the night. Where's he bedding? and it's obviously we're not close enough to his bedroom. So then it kind of, okay, which trail is he taking in? Let's see if we can find his track or some form of rub or something where
Okay.
he's coming from.
Just to hold that thought for just, I've got to dig into what you just said there. You're getting a picture on the camera, and you're checking that, and you're saying to yourself, where's he bedding? Are you saying, like, are you checking your Onyx after you check your camera, and you're just kind of looking for the most logical areas for that buck to be bedding during the day? Or can you expand on that?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I'll start pulling out my Onyx and I'm looking at it saying, okay, these other deer are showing up around this time, and then he's not showing up till way late or whenever. He's definitely not bedding, within, a couple hundred yards or, half a mile, like type of thing. Like he could be a mile up the canyon, and he's wandering down. So then it's like, where is he coming from? What's the most logical spot that this buck's probably bedding? And sometimes you have no idea. And so then it's like, I'll start looking around. And if you get a couple of days of pictures, figure out, okay, he's coming from the left here every day. That means he's coming, up the canyon, whatever. Or over this next little ridge. Okay, there, it's pretty thick up there in that spot. I could totally see him living up in there. Let's start looking for some tracks and backtracking here a little bit. And then I'll start, that's after I've already kind of figured out where I think he might be. Then I'm starting to really look pretty hard for the tracks, any sort of rub or anything, outside of my core area, and then, do my best guess. And then I'll take another camera and go throw it out there, on another trail or wherever it tracks, or if I find some, or, oh, okay, well, he might be coming through. Oh, shoot, we got a picture and he's 2 hours earlier. Now we're getting somewhere, and then I'll kind of really just start playing that backwards of, how are we going to hone in on this deer, and then start working my way that way. If that's the deer I want to kill. But then all of a sudden, then you get the wild card one day after you've done all this homework, and he shows up in the middle of the freaking day at your stand.
Yeah. And I think that is, like, for me, John, that is what separates mule deer hunting versus whitetail hunting, is the wild card aspect. And I don't get the wild cards with muleys that I do with whitetail. I gotta, we're going to wrap this up here pretty quick.
Sure.
One question out of that. Let's say that there was a governor of Western hunting and he was totally in charge of everything, right?
Yep.
And he came to your house and was like, John, for the rest of your life, you can only hunt mule deer or whitetail. Which one would you pick?
Oh, whitetail all day.
Whitetail all day? Why? Tell me a little bit.
To me, Ryan Lampers and Phelps, they'd kill me for this, but like the chase, like it is to me. I've hunted mule deer. I've killed some big mule deer. I mean, one year I drew a mule deer tag in Washington, and I had a giant whitetail on my camera that year, and I ended up shooting this mule deer. Well, I had a mule deer, this special tag, and I'd waited 12 years to draw it, and so I went and hunted it. But I killed this 193-inch mule deer, and the whitetail that I had on my camera ended up getting whacked, and it was bigger than that mule deer. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, man, that is a blow. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, long story short, to me, like the mule deer are easier in a way to find. It's like you said, like I kind of know where I can go and look, and I'm going to find mule deer and, like go hunt them. And the other thing I feel like with the mule deer is, how many times have you seen one and they run, you spook them, they run out, and they just stop at 100 yards broadside, and it's like, hey, shoot me, like here's
all the time. Unless it's, I would say if it's a 5-point mule deer or bigger. Well, no, I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to say if it's like 140 class inch mule deer or bigger, I've never personally seen that. If they're younger than that, they always stop.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So for example, that 193-inch mule deer that I killed, that thing, we spotted it. I ended up sneaking down in there, and I come over this knoll, and I knew it was going to be right over the knoll. And dude, it's at like 30 yards, and I hemmed and hawed about shooting it for a second because its body was so big when I actually got up close, it threw the horn size off, even though I knew the horns were big, but like I thought he was like 170-inch deer, not that big. So it was the first day of my hunt, and I was like, I don't know if I want to kill that thing. So I literally let him run out, and he runs out to like 80 yards and just stops broadside and just looks back. And I was like,
wow, really?
Yeah.
No
And he's
kidding.
He's like an 8.5-year-old deer.
Holy
and
cow.
Super old buck. He's got kickers going all over the place. And I was like, that's bigger than I think. I know he's as big as we thought in the beginning. Like, I'm going to kill it. So I just blew it over. But he just ran out and stopped. And then I killed another mule deer in Montana a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. That thing did the same thing. Took off running, ran out to like 350, 400 yards and just stopped broadside on the hill, like looking back. And he was just like, hi, shoot me. So I shot him. He's like 170-inch buck. And so like now whitetails, I mean, I've blown more opportunities on big bucks than like I've killed. And I mean, they're just so hard. And just from drawing your bow, getting the bow off the bow hook, getting set up, being able to draw and get the full draw without them hearing you, to me is the hunt. Like that's 99% of the battle. Once you get the full draw, especially if they're 20, 30 yards, like it's kind of game over. But getting to that point, not being, not getting smelled, and just the whole game, man, I've drawn back on big bucks and they'll hear one little, like, your arrow sliding across the rest so faint you can hardly hear it. Boom, they freak out, they take off running. Or you get to full draw, they catch your movement and they spook. They are so much harder to truly kill when it comes down to killing time than it is like a mule deer, in my opinion. And that's why, they're just harder to find a big mature buck. Like they're mule deer, I feel like you can see them out there, and especially if you're hunting sage or something, it's like they're just standing out there all day long. So
I don't know if they're standing out there all day long, John.
I know, I'm just throwing it out, but it's definitely different. It's not the same.
Yeah, no, there is nothing that you said that I would disagree with at all. From that standpoint, I want to say a couple things. First of all, what I really like about you, John, I think about this every time we have a conversation. You're so casual about knocking over big animals. Like we were talking a week ago or whatever when I was calling you for that other thing outside of the podcast, and you're like, I got sick of waiting, so I killed this no big deal, that little 6-point elk. Yeah. For guys like me that are like, I'd be super excited to knock over a raghorn, and I'd be texting you. It'd be 3 a.m. I'd be texting you, waking your ass up. Look at this buck, or look at this bull. And then you're like, this 193-inch mule deer, man. I just decided to tip it over because it stopped and looked at me.
I mean,
I love it, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I mean, I put in so much time, and I think this is where, for me personally, and anyone that knows me, like really close, I mean, drives my wife nuts, but like, this is what I think about 365 days a year. Like, even if I'm working, I'm constantly thinking about hunting. I'm scouting, I'm looking at onyx. We'll be laying in bed, and I kid you not, I mean, every night that goes by, especially summer and fall, like I'm on onyx every night looking. Even if I've scouted an area 50 times, I'm still looking. And I spent so much time and invested in it. It's like, when I'm out there, I want to make sure I'm like giving it everything I have. And then, it's almost like I expect, in a way, like, to have the results that I've envisioned in my head. And then when things start going sideways, I'm like, okay, what's plan B, C, D? How am I getting back to A? And so then it's like, when I see some of these animals, and then you're like, okay, well, dang, like that was almost too easy, but I've already put in so much time and effort on some hunts. Like it doesn't, I don't know. It's like, it's weird. I don't know how to explain. I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
No,
it's
you're explaining it right, man. I think what happens is, like, some people achieve this thing with hunting where it's like it sounds like a stupid cliche-ish term, but or whatever, but you're a next level hunter, man. Like I'm not a next level hunter. I would be tickled. I'd be happier than a homeless dude on a hoagie sandwich if I got a raghorn bull, right? I just because I'm not a next level hunter. I'm a decent hunter. I'm not a great hunter. You're a great hunter, and it shows in the effort that you put into it, both preseason and during season, and the results that you get out of season. And you're just one of those dudes that is next level. And so I think about, what it's funny you say that, like, pulling up Onyx while you're laying in bed, and like my wife thinks I'm watching her stupid golden bachelor show or something she's been putting on lately. Yeah, it's like The Bachelor, but it's an old dude, and he sounds just like Joe Gilia from Elk Bros. And so I keep thinking she's watching Elk Bros or something. Nope.
Yep.
It's Bachelor. And she thinks I want to be into it or whatever. I'll be looking at Onyx. Anyway, the point is that you've achieved a thing that a lot of hunters strive to achieve, and let's face it, not a lot of hunters get to that level in their life. And that could be for many reasons. It could be just for, basic skill levels, basic commitment levels, basic, focus levels. How committed are you to, and I'm saying this to the listeners, how committed are you to hunting? How committed, because there's nothing wrong with somebody who gets a deer tag and just wants to go out and shoot a little, forked horn or something because they only have a Saturday and a Sunday. I don't care if people are like that. I don't judge people for that. I judge your commitment. I judge a person's like commitment versus how they present themselves. And you're a super humble guy that presents himself in that way, but you're like massively successful in the field. And I think that that's really cool. I think that's a super rare and really cool combination. And there's not a lot of people that have that. You have like Cam Haynes. You have, I feel like Dirk Durham's like this. He's a super humble guy. He's confident, but he's humble. And you have other hunters out there that, they've reached this next level kind of thing. And, they're also just cool dudes in the meantime. Then you have these people that reach this high level, this next level kind of hunting level or skill level. And they're freaking assholes about it. It's a total turnoff for the rest of us that are just kind of average hunters, And so I want to go back real quick. There has got to be something, because you grew up hunting whitetails, right?
Yes and no. I mean, blacktails, I grew up in Western Washington, so I hunted them when I was young, and elk, Roosevelt elk and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up hunting elk and blacktails, but I was pretty young, and my dad, we started hunting whitetails. So I pretty much, I've been hunting whitetails since I was kind of in my teen years.
Well, nobody respects a blacktail hunter. Let's just face. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. I'm just pissing my Western Washington.
No one shoots those things. I mean, so yeah.
We're gonna get nasty emails, man. But going back to making a choice, if you wanted to be, for you, it's hands down a whitetail hunter versus mule deer. And what I would say to you is, like 5 years ago, heck, even 3 years ago, if somebody would have asked me that, it would have been hands down a mule deer hunter. Absolutely no questions asked. If you ask me today, I think I would still lean towards the mule deer, but I am very much on the fence, and I don't know that I can answer the question honestly, because I've gotten addicted in the last half a decade here to these whitetail bucks, man. They are something else. I was wrong about them before I started hunting them. And I'm not talking about, I spent a few years out in North Carolina and shot a few little whitetail out there. It's different. It's different than what we're talking about now. These whitetail public land mountain bucks are like, they will send thrills through your body that even a giant bugling bull elk sometimes will not do. And it's just because they have this mystique and this mysteriousness to them that you just don't get with other species, man. Like they're just insane. again, I think it's still, and again, this goes to my childhood. Like you were talking, you grew up, blacktail, whitetail. I grew up solely on mule deer hunting. It's what I know, and it's what I like dreamed about when I'm 10 years old, reading hunting magazines and dreaming about going on hunt, the next hunt and whatever. It was always mule deer over elk, over everything else. And so it would be hard for me to say that I'd prefer to hunt whitetail, but I will tell you that I'm in the year 2023, I will be spending a lot more time pursuing whitetail bucks than I will mule deer bucks.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm with you on that. I think here's my thing that, and people ask, about whitetails and why I love them and this and that. The amount of big whitetail bucks that I've truly seen in the daylight, let alone, kill. And when you do see one, it's either you better shit or get off the pot. Sorry for the language, but like, you're gonna, you better figure out a way real quick and kill that thing, because the amount of time that you're going to get a chance, and I'm talking these mountain bucks, like like I said, I haven't hunted them in the Midwest, so I don't know, but like the mountains are so tough and the things change. The amount of opportunity window that you have to kill one of these deer is so small. And like, I've literally stood out on a hillside and watched mule deer feed around and had a chance to shoot bucks and like let them go because you're sitting there watching them, or elk. Like I've had some really nice bulls this year. I mean, I had some really nice bulls come in and stand there and look around and decided to pass on them. And it's kind of one of those things where the amount I could probably, if I added up the amount of time, opportunity window, we'll just say that, to kill these whitetails and all the ones that I've killed, it is so much shorter. Like I probably could have one elk that stood there longer than I've had opportunities to shoot all the whitetails.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
They're there and they're gone. And like times when I've caught glimpses of a big buck and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, here comes one, and poof, he vanishes and you never see him again. And so they're tough. I mean, I think, my draw.
Yeah. Well, Jon, as always, man, I got a lot out of this conversation. I'm sure the audience did too. I'm so stoked for whitetail season this year, even though I do feel like we were talking earlier, I feel totally unprepared this season because of how fast this year has gone by, but I do have a line, man. I have a line on a few good bucks. So I'm hoping they kind of maintain either what they've been doing or what they were doing last year, because it's going to be a good season if they do. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. Anything else you want to share with everybody before we call it a night?
Man, I'm pretty good. We covered a lot. I think the biggest thing is just go out and enjoy your time in the woods and friends and family, and make the best of it, because it's short-lived. So
yeah, for sure. Anything with the Elk Collective? Anything new you want to share for anybody listening? The Elk Collective is an online educational, what do you call that? A digital course, right? A digital elk hunting course. Elk hunting course learning center, we'll call it, maybe. Yeah, and it applies to anybody that's looking to hunt archery, rifle, muzzle loader, late season, early season. It doesn't matter. So, you guys, it's not like astronomically priced. It's actually super reasonable. If anybody's interested in jumping on the Elk Collective, and what is that course, like $89 or something?
Yeah, and I think we're running a special right now for like $59 if you want to go pick it up for a bit.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good idea for you late season hunters.
Yep. And so I'd have to go look at. You catch me off guard. I don't remember what the code is exactly, but go on there. There'll be a code. You can get it for like $59, and pick it up for late season here. You'll still pick up some tips and tactics on late season strategies and your gear and that type of stuff, and how to take care of an elk after, and process it and all the whole thing. So go to the
heck yeah, man. elkcollective.com, and also the Instagram is like _elk_collective.com or whatever at Instagram, Yep. And then your Instagram is Jon.Gabrio. And so if you guys, all that'll be in the show notes, guys, if you guys want to check it out. So, John, again, I appreciate you joining me. That was a really good conversation. I think we're going to see some more notch tags this year because of some of the information you provided.
Sure hope so. I just love seeing people be successful.
Heck yeah, man. Well, let's keep in touch, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You made it! That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.